Senior Air Force leaders are sounding the alarm at a lack of high-tech flight simulators and are calling for upgrades they say are necessary to prepare for combat in a next-generation fight. A RAND Corporation published a report saying that flight simulators, sometimes called sims, are needed for the Air Force. There's an unmet need for sims. In an ideal world, we'd be getting more readiness data from sims than from aircraft. The outcomes they want to predict are not available in live fly. I'd be interested to hear you guys expand on that. They mentioned that the simulators for the B-1 Lancer, the B-2 Spirit, and the B-52 Stratofortress lack fidelity because the aircraft are getting changed so often that the Special Operations Command simulators can't keep up. And they also pointed out that the service's shortage of updated and high-tech simulators stems partly from a desire to invest in more aircraft and engines, both of which are easier requests to get funded. One senior leader told RAND that it doesn't matter if you have engines or not, because you'll fail at the mission if simulation training is put on the back burner. And they mentioned that T-38s are getting old and falling apart. Not quite in those words. And they also referenced the recruitment failures that have been happening. They've averaged around 1,300 new pilots for each year. And so that's leading to delays in getting new airmen to the training pipelines, delays in getting new engines, lack of instructor. Sounds like
stuff we've talked
spirals.
About.
Yep, and stuff we've talked about before. So that's that one.
Thanks, Doug. T-Bear, what do you think, man?
Well, I do have something to think about this or say about this. One thing about sims, I think they're an awesome additional training. One of the slippery slopes we always were concerned about was sim time replacing actual jet time. And there is no way you can do that. You have to feel the G's, fly the airplane, have a threat of actually dying while you're flying. And you just have to experience that. There's no other way around that. I don't know, maybe you could put a little taser in the seat or something.
when you injected in, was it the A-10 sim or was it the gun? The one in New Orleans, when it had a seat vibrator, it had that butt kicker.
Oh yeah,
you know what I'm talking about?
Gun. But I had when I went to F-16 school, when you would get hit with an air-to-air missile, it would hit you in the bottom of the seat.
Yeah, yeah, the butt kicker.
Yeah, but what I was going to say is sims are really good for practicing things that you just are very difficult to reproduce out in the air. Because like SAM threats, and you go out and getting something on your raw gear and being able to look outside and see something, you can't really replicate that out on the range, but in a sim you can. And also for big packages, so to speak, with the DTS they call it? I can't remember the term, but where they link them all together, you could have a 4-ship at it gives you an opportunity to very cheaply fly a big package, strike package that otherwise you would have to deploy airplanes over to Nellis or something for, and so it's great for that, but you just have to make sure you don't hit the slippery slope of it replacing flight time. And the other thing they do is they make your flight time more productive, because if you can go practice it in the sim and then go fly it, your learning curve is much steeper that way. And like I'm teaching a guy to do is I'm working on a guy's instrument rating right now, and we're trying to fly ILSs, and he keeps dorking the same thing up over and over and over and over. And every time he dorks it up, it's a wasted 15 minutes around the pattern. Where if I had him in a sim, I could just IC him back out 5 miles back and start over. And if you could get it right in the sim, then when you go get in the airplane, the potential for him to screw that up is much less. So the benefit of flying the approach is it's more efficient. So yeah, I think sims are a big deal, and certainly something we should have, but I don't think they ever should replace flying time.
They're good part task trainers. if you want either, like you said, to practice one thing over and over and over again, get a bunch of reps. When we went out, before we had the link sims, you're welcome, Homestead, by the way. Before we had the link sims, we had to go places because they were hard to find. And you could put a 4-ship of, 4 dudes linked in a 4-ship and go practice from the commit to point X to picture clean over and over and over, instead of having to reset, put the red air guys back in the, the red air safe area, reset the picture, all that stuff. So you were able to get more reps and not burn a bunch of gas. But like you're talking about, T-Bear, it's not the same as going out and pulling G's and feeling what the jet's doing and worrying about, am I going to actually hit somebody? Am I going to hit my wingman? Am I going to hit the red air? Am I going to get out of my block? All the stuff that you think about when your mind, because I think when we go into a simulator, our mind goes, well, I'm sitting here at 1G. I know this is not a threat. Nothing I do is going to think. And that actually, to me, can be bad if you try to replace flight time, because I think it takes away that fear of death. And then you get that bad habit pattern of, well, I'm just, nothing ever happens here. He resets it about this point. No, I'm in a real airplane now. This is bad.
Yeah.
I think the article was also mentioning the fact that, like with the B1, the B-52, and the B2, that the airplanes have developed, like the sim doesn't reflect the airplane very well. And like when they sent me to learn the T-38, they sent me to I went and learned the T-38C. I got like literally okay, good to go. I don't know how many hours I got, 10, whatever it was. And then I went to our operational squadron that flew T-38A, different cockpit, and I was lost in the sauce. So I can see how, if the Air Force doesn't have enough money to update the cockpits of the sims, I've never seen the inside of the B1, B2, or B-52, but I imagine those airplanes are a little more like an airliner, and if you don't have the right things to push buttons, because that's how you fly those planes a lot, it can be a challenge, So I agree with you guys totally. You can't replace flight time with sim time, and they have their place. But I think especially with big airplanes that, like in the civilian side, the airliner sims are pretty real, because they don't really have to simulate a lot of G's or maneuvering, just basic flying around.
And the article did talk about bombers. Like one of the biggest things was B1, B2, B-52, all that stuff. It wasn't specifically fighters.
Right. And I would imagine, the bombers, you should be able to have a pretty darn realistic, level D mover, level C, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever the highest fidelity full motion sim that you can get. So I would think they should have some pretty good stuff, but apparently they don't.
Yeah. The B-52,
actually, I'm not surprised.
B-52 is not very good at Barksdale. I know.
Have you been in it, T-Bear?
I haven't been in it, but the guy I used to work with had to go fly that every few months, and it was not very good. But one thing, we used to kind of have a rule on OFPs that it would go in the sim before it went in the airplane.
Yeah.
And so that you could actually go in there and get your hands on it in the sim before you put it in the airplane. And that was important.
Yeah, I remember that. As a guy who did a lot of sim stuff, it was always the sim got it first, and then the airplane, like months. It wasn't even close. Doug, I want to bring you into this too, because I think one of the risks is the negative training. And when you like iRacing, we see this a lot in iRacing. You see people doing things that they might not necessarily do in a real car.
Yep. I see people doing things that would never work in real life. And it's a little bit different because it's a multiplayer situation, but as long as they're doing it wrong better than everybody else, they think they're doing it right.
Yeah.
Called a simism.
And that's not to say, Air Force, we have structured in training and we do understand, but how many times has something worked or not worked in the sim and you're like, well, that's not like this. Just the bad habit transfer from something that might not be 100% to something else, because you might gain a bad habit pattern. So sometimes it is worse.
my 30 years of muscle memory are completely useless to me in iRacing. I'm much better at oval which I learned in the sim than I am at road racing, which I learned in real life.
Well, Gonky knows this because he's obviously an expert at DCS.
I can fly a jet into the ground in DCS like nobody's business, dude. Record time.
Gonky, there was a comment a while ago. I was like, I see why he's not in the Navy anymore. I'm like, dude, because it had nothing to do with flying video games. That's why.
Yeah, real life is so much harder.